Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Thumma amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So now I want to have a little bit of a conversation with you about the names Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. When I teach a surah of the Quran, typically I go through tafsirs of it and the linguistics of it and all this other kind of stuff. But the purpose here for you guys is actually not to do any of that, is to understand the subject matter itself and to understand how things are connected and how we can draw lessons from that. Just basic first off lessons. That's why I'm focusing on how you make sense of the Fatiha for yourself and how we derive our faith from it. So on that note, I'm going to tell you two things about Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Some things about Ar-Rahman, some things about Ar-Rahim, and then we'll tie that all together. Both of these words have to do with the word Rahma. The word Rahma is actually in Arabic associated with the word Rahm, R-A-H-M. If you're taking notes, R-A-H-M, just Rahm. Rahm means the stomach of a mother, the womb of a mother when she's expecting, when a baby is in her stomach. Okay, that's called Rahm. In other words, there's a direct relationship between Allah's Rahmah, which is commonly translated as mercy, and the stomach of a mother. Now, what in the world does that mean? First of all, let's understand the word mercy and why I think it's not the best translation for the word Rahmah. It is not because the word mercy in the English language is used when you are being spared. In other words, the soldiers showed no mercy. What does that mean? The soldiers spared no one. The plaintiff asked the judge for mercy, which means he asked to be spared. Okay? Mercy, mercy, 1, 2, 3. When you play a game with mercy, what are you saying? Please don't punish me. Please don't catch me. Please don't make me it. Please don't whatever. In other words, the idea of mercy is there was something bad that was about to happen and then somebody intervened and showed you mercy. You understand? So the word mercy in English kind of makes you think about something bad happening and then you being kind of spared. Which, if you only use that word over and over again for Allah, would make it seem like Allah intends for something bad to happen to you. Unless He wasn't merciful, He's kind of sparing you. But that's actually not the intent of the word. The intent of the word is to show a kind of relationship. The closest thing you can imagine to that relationship is what's happening with a baby and a mother. Even though Allah is perfect and that relationship is far beyond that, just to give you some idea. Which is why in a famous hadith, Allah is actually speaking to the womb. The womb of the mother is how humanity was spread. All of us came as a result of the womb of the mother. And Allah spoke to His creation, the womb, and said, "Sammaytuka bismi." I named you with one of my names. I named the womb with one of my names. It's talking to the womb. Allah is talking to the womb and telling it that I named you with one of my names. Now what is that name? Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman. Right? So now what is about the womb of the mother that is important to note? A few things. Number one, a child is inside the womb. Does the child even know that it's being taken care of? No. It is being taken care of in ways that it cannot realize. Allah is taking care of us in ways that we cannot realize. This mother is putting up with a lot of pains and a lot of difficulties that the child is doing. The child is technically doing nothing for the mother, and the mother is doing everything for the child. We are doing nothing for Allah. Allah is doing everything for us. That's the second sort of implication out of Rahmah. We do nothing for Allah. We cannot add to His kingdom. We cannot make Him any wealthier than He is. We cannot praise Him any more than He's already praised. We can't add anything to Him. There's nothing we can offer to Him. And yet He's constantly doing for us, without even us realizing His presence. Then all of the child's needs are being met by the mother. The child is completely surrounded by the care of the mother. His food, his drink, when the child even excretes, the body takes care of it, cleans it up. All of it is provided for. His housing, there's no rent to pay. He doesn't have to pay the utility bills, nothing. All of it's taken care of. In other words, we are completely enveloped, wrapped up in the loving care of Allah. And of course, what is the only motivation? The mother's not going to be paid for this baby. She's not going to be, she's not getting anything back. The only motivation the mother has is she has an extreme form of love. I mean, imagine this, the child, as the child grows inside the stomach of a mother, it only becomes more and more of a problem for her physically. It becomes more and more of a problem. And yet, as it becomes more and more of a problem, she becomes more and more in love with this baby. She's only increasing in her love. It's incredible. And then it comes out and it, like I keep saying, it almost killed her, and she doesn't say, you almost killed me. She grabs the baby and gives it a hug and cries and is so happy and starts feeding it, and whoa. Anybody else that'll make you bleed, you're not going to give them a hug. This is an illogical relationship. A relationship you cannot even make sense of. This love is beyond something that makes sense. It's beyond something that makes sense. And so this relationship is kind of what Allah is doing for us. Allah's love for us just doesn't make sense. It's beyond sense. Way beyond that. You cannot limit it to common sense. We don't deserve it. If it was common sense, we don't deserve that kind of love. We just don't. Now, two names, Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, both having to do with the same love and care. Now, I'd like to translate it as loving care or love and care. Two names that have to do with that. The first one is Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman means that this love and care is extreme. It's beyond imagination, it's extreme. It also means that it's not forever. The second implication of that is that that extreme love of Allah is not forever. The words that rhyme with Ar-Rahman in Arabic, Ar-Rahman in Arabic, are words like Atshan and Jaw'an and Ghadban. And so there are other words that rhyme with that, and words that sound like that, they all have something in common. None of them are permanent. Someone who's extremely angry is not going to stay extremely angry forever. Even the Hulk chills out eventually, right? Someone who's extremely thirsty will not stay extremely thirsty forever. Either they'll die or drink something. But that state cannot be forever. Jaw'an means extremely hungry. Someone who's extremely hungry cannot stay in that condition forever. They will either eat or they'll die. Something will happen. But that state will change. Now, something has to happen for that to change. It doesn't just change on its own. Thirst doesn't just go away on its own. You have to what? Drink. You have to drink to get rid of it. Similarly, Allah's loving care is there and it's extreme, but it will not go away on its own. You would have had to mess up seriously badly for it to go away for you. You would have to mess up really seriously badly. But does it go away? The real question is, when does it go away? The best answer to that is from a companion of the Prophet ﷺ, Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who explained that the love and care of Allah will go away for most human beings on the Day of Judgment. On the Day of Judgment. Until then, He's Ar-Rahman. For all of us. For every human being. So He doesn't just love you and care about you, He loves and cares about every human being, Muslim or non. Okay? He actually even loves and cares those who hate Him, even them. The door's open. If they come back to Him, it's open. The invitation is never closed. However, Ar-Rahim, this is the meanings of Ar-Rahman. You got it? It's extreme and it's not forever. It's only for this life. Ar-Rahim means always loving and caring. Always loving and caring. And the idea here is that this is actually special for believers, Muslims, those who actually accepted Allah and tried to appreciate Him at least a little bit. Those people, for them Allah will be constantly loving and caring. And what is that a reference to? When is the constant life? The next life. Once Judgment Day begins, then paradise begins, then Allah's love and care is constant. Okay? This is why you find in the Quran, Salamun qawlan min Rabbin Rahim. Not Rabbin Rahman, but Rabbin Rahim. Allah will say salam on Judgment Day, or in Jannah, Allah will actually turn to believers and Allah will say Assalamu alaikum to you. It's in the Quran. He'll say salam to you. Salam coming from a master that is Rahim, that is always loving and caring. Okay? So those were the two names of Allah in Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. Both of them were important because if you only mention Ar-Rahman, then the mercy would be extreme but it wouldn't be permanent. If you only mention Ar-Rahim, it would be permanent but it wouldn't be extreme. So Allah felt that it should be both of those together that should be mentioned. Okay? So now, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim. At this point, look, I realize that I have messed up quite a bit. I have not thanked Allah enough. He's my master, has a right to discard me. But for some reason, He has this unusual kind of love for me that He allows me to continue to breathe and live my life and continue to disobey Him. And I feel like maybe if I've gotten this far in my understanding, then maybe I should take the next step and understand something else. is this loving care enough for me to just take advantage of him? This goes back to the question of decency. If someone's doing nice things for you, your parents are doing nice things for you. They're paying for your school, they're getting you an iPod, they're loading it up with whatever apps you wanted to download. They're being charged, not you. You're not paying a penny for it. And then you want Wi-Fi, so they get you Wi-Fi and whatever else. They're giving. And the moment they stop giving, you decide that you're gonna freak out. You can't do this to me! Is that a sign of decency? Did you for some moments forget that you actually they don't owe you anything? They don't owe you anything. You owe them. You don't deserve a bed at home. You don't. That's not something you deserve. That is something that they gave you. They love you. They're not going to say go sleep in the garage, hopefully. Not tonight. Okay? But the idea here is when you are being given gifts constantly and you've been taking advantage of them and not appreciating, and actually the more he gives, the more entitled you feel, like I should get better. I should get even more. How come Allah doesn't give me more? There are people like that. They say, how come I failed my test? I prayed so much that I would pass. I still failed my test. How come Allah failed me? Really, how come Allah failed you? When someone does so much for you and then you turn around and you complain about them, that's a huge sign of indecency. And don't think that just because Allah is so loving and caring that He's not going to actually ever be upset with you or question you about your obnoxious attitude. The believer realizes when he thinks about this, the human being, not the believer, the human being realizes that there's going to be a time maybe that I might have to answer for what I've been doing. Even though He's been loving and caring all this time, there must be some way, some time that I and every human being will have to answer for what we've done. What is the next ayah of the Fatiha? Maliki Yawmiddin, the master of the day of judgment, of justice. You will be asked. You will be interrogated. Justice will be served. Now, I want you to, I know some of you are younger and you're not exposed to philosophy yet, but some things are important. I'll try to make it as simple as I can. There are some people who don't believe in God. And the reason they don't believe in God is they say there is injustice in this world. The reason they say I don't believe in God is because there is injustice. And there are two kinds of injustice. Injustice that happened to them in their own life, or injustice that they've seen outside of themselves, maybe on the news, or an earthquake, or disease, or children dying, and all kinds of terrible things that are happening in the world. Okay? So there's two kinds of injustice. One is personal, like something that happened to somebody, something really bad happened to them, and they decided they don't want to believe in Allah anymore. Or something that they see outside and they say, if there was a great God that loves and cares so much, there wouldn't be all this mess outside. There wouldn't be this terrible life outside. Okay? Now, the Qur'an's response to that is actually inside Maliki Yawmiddin. How? Allah has perfect, for there to be a God, He has to be perfect. Isn't that true? Anything less than perfect, and you can't call Him God anymore. So everything about Him has to be perfect. His love has to be perfect, His mercy has to be perfect, His knowledge has to be perfect, His wisdom has to be perfect. His justice also has to be perfect. So somebody who says, if God is unjust, well, He won't be God. You can't call Him God because He's not perfect. Because to be perfect, you have to be perfectly fair. Isn't that true? So the complaint that's being made about, I don't believe in God because if He is there, He's not fair. And if He's not fair, well, He can't be God, is actually logical. That's a logical complaint. But the Qur'an answers that logical complaint with the following. Allah Azza wa Jal describes, and the concept in Islam is that this world, the world we live in right now, is actually not designed to be perfectly fair. Nothing in this life is actually perfectly fair. I keep coming back to your parents. What your parents have done for you, no matter how much you give back to them, you still won't be able to pay them back. You're still going to be falling short of what your mom did for you, for example, or what your dad did for you. It's not fair. It's what they get from you as opposed to what they gave to you is not fair. Similarly, when you get a job, let me take a few examples. When you get a job, your job is maybe you get paid $20 an hour or something, right? And you work 8 hours a day. And your boss tells you that you have to do this work. Is it true that you're working every second of every one of those 8 hours? Exactly as you're supposed to? Is that true? But is it true that you get $20 an hour anyway? You don't get rated by the second? You get rated by the hour? Even though there may have been several minutes in that hour that you didn't actually do much work? You just chilled out, stood by the water cooler, hung out with friends, checked Facebook status, or whatever it was? Is it true? In other words, you're being paid, but it's not really perfect wages. It's not perfect, like exact, you understand? There is some element of unfairness in there. You got away with some things. Similarly, somebody slaps you. Inshallah, not in Ramadan, but somebody slaps you. Or ever, fine. And you say, I want justice. So what do? You slap them back, except you've been working out for a long time. And your slap can kill the guy. As you slapped them, several teeth flew out of the mouth. I mean, they slapped and you slapped, but is it equal? No. No. A little 2-year-old kid comes over and pushes you when you say, I need justice. Whee! Like, you can't have perfect justice in this world. You just can't. Similarly, in a court case, a person killed 5 people. One guy went on a shooting spree, killed 5 people. Now he's got on trial. What's the worst you can do to him? Kill him how many times? How do you kill someone 5 times? You can only kill him how many times? But he killed how many? Is that fair? Actually, that's not fair. The Quran and Islam are actually openly stating that this world is actually not perfectly fair. We're not in disagreement with the atheist on that point. So if he's saying, this world isn't fair, therefore, this world isn't fair, congratulations on that one, we agree. We actually agree. As a matter of fact, even in the Prophet's life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, somebody came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There were 2 people who came that had a disagreement among each other, and they wanted the Prophet to solve the case. They wanted him to be the judge. And one guy spoke really well, and the other guy was kind of quiet. He's just not a talkative person. Now the guy who could speak really well made his case really well, because he could talk really well. He's like a used car salesman. But the other guy is shy and quiet, so he didn't say much. Obviously, if he doesn't say much and doesn't make a good case, he might lose the case, right? But just because the guy can speak well and the other guy cannot speak well, does that necessarily mean that the guy that can speak well is right and the guy who cannot speak well is wrong? Does that mean that? So the Prophet tells him, alayhi salatu wasalam, listen, I can only judge this case based on what you guys are telling me. But Allah will give you the actual justice. In other words, even when the Prophet judges a case, even when the most just human being in existence judges a case, even he recognizes that this world is not about what? Perfect justice. Actually, Sharia law that people are so scared of is not about giving perfect justice either. It is the best human beings can do in this world. For instance, in Sharia, you can have you can be killed for killing someone. You can be killed for killing someone. Is it true though that when the witness came to testify that you murdered someone, that witness lied? Is it possible that that witness who lied is reliable in society, he's got credibility in society, people listen to him, and he came and lied anyway? Is it possible? Sure. And according to the Islamic judge, he's going to issue the death penalty because he got a reliable witness. He's going to issue the death penalty. And this guy died. Did he die a fair death or an unfair death? He died an unfair death even though he was judged according to Islamic law. Isn't that true? So just because there will be a fair law doesn't mean that there will be justice. Just having fair laws is not the same as having justice. Perfect justice in this world, we can only try. We cannot get perfect. We can only try. And that's powerful to know because Allah is teaching us in the Quran that you and I have to constantly try. That's all that's asked of us. We are not asked to be perfect. We're not asked to create a perfect society. We are human beings. We're never going to be perfect. Now, having said that, Allah is still perfect, isn't He? Allah is still perfect. And if Allah is perfect, then He has to be perfectly fair. But I already said that this world isn't perfectly fair. Is that clear to you guys? So there seems to be a problem. How can someone who is perfectly fair make something that isn't perfectly fair. This is where the atheist has a problem. And the Qur'an's answer to that is, actually, you're looking at one side of the equation. You guys ever study in algebra how to balance an equation? When you do something to one side, you have to do it to the other side to balance the equation. So the problem is someone who only believes in this world is seeing this side of the equation, and there's a bunch of imbalance. And there's no balance. Well, all the crimes somebody committed on this side that they got away with, or even if they paid for them partially. They didn't pay for them fully. They got away with them. Those crimes will be paid for on Judgment Day. The purpose of Judgment Day is to take all the little injustices and the big injustices that somebody got away with, or all the good deeds that somebody did and never got paid for. It's not just about bad things, it's also about good things. Maybe you did a bunch of good stuff and you never got appreciated. Nobody ever thanked you. Nobody ever helped you as a result. You got no rewards, no commendations, nothing. That's not fair. You did work. You should be appreciated. And so all of that will be paid for on Judgment Day. If you don't believe in Judgment Day, it becomes impossible to believe in a God. Let's work backwards now. If you don't believe in Judgment Day, it becomes impossible to believe in a God. Why? Because if you don't believe in Judgment Day, then you're left with a world that is unfair. If you're left with a world that is unfair, then you've got a God who is unfair. And if God is unfair, God is imperfect. And if God is imperfect, He isn't God at all. You understand? So now we're learning in the Fatiha, we're going to praise and thank Allah for this world, even though it's not perfect, even though we're not perfect. There's still plenty of wonderful things in this world. And the things that we note that happen, that you can't make sense of, there are children who are terminally ill. I met families, children 5 years old. I just met a family the other day, 2 days ago. A brother came up to me and said, my 5-year-old son died a month ago. It was very sad. Now, when I have children, I can't imagine the pain he's going through. I can't imagine, But that pain that he's suffering, and that child's pain, and that child's death, is any of it going to go unpaid, unrewarded? No. All of it will be compensated for. When will it be compensated? Judgment Day. There are some things in this world, some joys that you enjoyed, that you shouldn't have enjoyed, and you'll have to pay the price for them on Judgment Day. And there are some pains you suffered in this world, and Allah will pay you back for the suffering on Judgment Day. Someone who's very, very sick, you know what the Prophet used to say to them? He used to say, La ba's tahur insha'Allah. He said, no problem. It's purifying. It's purifying if Allah wants. What does that mean? It's purifying. This person who's sick, have they also done sins? Yeah. And Allah is telling them that I'm making you briefly sick right now because on Judgment Day, all of this sickness, every second of it, is actually taking sins off of your record. He's just cleaning you up. And you show up on Judgment Day, you look better than everybody else. And you looked worse than everybody else in this world. You were sick, you're in a hospital bed all the time, and you're standing there in Judgment Day, and you're in a better position than everybody else. Tahur. Purified. No sins. Highest places in Jannah being offered. Subhanallah. That's the concept of Judgment Day. Maliki Yawmiddin. Now I told you, these 3 ayat are a very comprehensive picture of what Allah wants from us. Who Allah is. Who Allah is. Alhamdulillah, we talked about that. Then Rabbil Alameen, He is Rabb to us. If He's Rabb to us, He could do whatever He wants with us. I'm reviewing now. But He doesn't just toss us away. He still shows us a lot of love and a lot of care. But just because He shows us a lot of love and a lot of care does not mean that the injustices that you did or the injustices that were done to you will go unanswered. Where will they be answered? The Day of Judgment, Maliki Yawmiddin. Now that He gives you this big picture, this is who I am to you. Now you decide whether you want to have a relationship with me or not. Whether you accept it or not, He is the master. Whether you accept it or not, He is the master. But the question is, will you accept the fact that you're a slave? That's up to you. You have to make that decision. If you don't reach that conclusion for yourself, nothing can be done. Which is why you have to come on to terms yourself and say it for yourself. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. We declare openly, we say that we want to give ourselves in slavery to you. We openly declare that we are slaves to you. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ. Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to join you in this relationship. I accept you as master. I have accepted myself as slave. And now that I've accepted myself as slave, I realize that now, because you have done more than I can ever imagine. Isn't that true? He's done more for me than I can ever imagine. That must mean I owe him a little or a lot. I owe him a lot. And if I owe someone a lot and I have got a lot of makeup assignments to do, is that easy to do? No. Which means I can't do this myself. I need some help. I owe you a lot, and in order to give you what I owe you, can you help me? It's kind of funny that we're wanting to pay back Allah for what He's done for us, but we realize we don't even have the capability of paying Him back. So we don't just say إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ. What do we say? وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Ya Allah, I need your help. I don't know what to do. And this help is very powerful. And understand one dimension of this help that I don't often talk about. You see, Allah does way too much for us. And if you want to talk about fairness, then He should expect us to do a lot. A lot. Because He does a lot for us. If you're being paid a lot, you should be doing a lot of work. We asked Allah for help because we basically said, Ya Allah, I know you give me a lot, but I don't think I can do a lot. I need your help. I need some few tasks that I can do that are worth like super extra credit. So instead of me doing a lot, I can do a little, but it'll count for a lot. You understand this point? We can actually not do for Allah equal to what He does for us. That's impossible. That's impossible. Which is why one of the reasons we ask for help. Ya Allah, I'm ready to do what you want. But you tell me, you give me some things that I can actually do, and they're little, but they count for a lot. So here, this concept, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ, please understand this gift of Allah clearly. What is a slave? Do you know what a slave is? A slave is someone who has what kind of hours for his master? What are his work hours? 24. A slave has to do what the master says when? 24 hours. This machine that I own, this phone that I own is my slave. It's my property. When does it have to do what I want it to do? All the time. It has no choice. It has no choice. It does not say, hey, I only work from 9 to 5. No, I paid for it. I own it. It needs to do what I ask it to do when? All the time. Which means I should be in slavery to Allah 24/7. Is that even possible? Practically speaking, can you be in absolute obedience to Allah in everything that He says, every second, every single second? That's actually practically impossible. You're going to be sleeping sometimes. Isn't that true? You're going to be eating sometimes. You're going to be distracted sometimes. Isn't that true? So what Allah did for us is He gave us a few things to do. He said, fine, I'll help you. Now, before I tell you what He told us, understand that Allah is not just Rabb al-Alameen, the master of all people and all nations. He's also Rabbu samawati wal-ard. He's the master of the skies and the earth. Does the sun do everything Allah wanted to do every single second? Yes. If it took a break for just like 60 seconds, you know what would happen, right? We wouldn't be around anymore. Does the earth, does the ocean, do they obey Allah constantly? Constant, without a second's break? Yes. So all the other creations of Allah are in what kind of obedience to Allah? Constant. Could human beings, are we even capable of constant obedience? No. No. And it is a gift. And by the way, did Allah give human beings more than He gave any other creation? Yes. So He gave us the most, and we are capable of the least. You understand this? He gave us the most, and we are capable of the least. And so He says, okay, pray for me. Pray how many times? 5 times? Is that like 5 hours each time? So it's 25 hours in a day? How long do you have to pray? A few minutes? If you put all your prayers together, how much does it amount to in a day? I don't know, less than an hour? Maybe an hour? An hour if you're like actually praying. But you know us with the express train. The angel's like, not even wa alaikum salam yet. So our prayers, I think all of them combined would count to maybe 8 minutes or something. We're a record. Which means, and by the way, did he take like majority of things in this world and make them haram? No, he took the majority of the things and he made them halal. He made a few things haram. He asked you to go to Hajj every year, every month. He asked you to go to Hajj how many times? Once in a lifetime. Once in a lifetime. He asked you to, for example, he asked you, you need to not be distracted, you need to just worship me, don't get married. Because then you'll all be all about the wife and the husband and kids and you'll just live your life. You won't worry about me anymore. So you shouldn't get married, you should just worship me. Did he do that? Oh, he let you get married. He let you get married. Does he allow you to travel? Allow you to do all different kinds of work? Does he give you a lot of freedom? He did. But I thought slaves are not supposed to have what? Freedom. I just turned to Allah and said, Ya Allah, I'm ready to be a slave. Allah says, fine, my slavery is really easy. Understand, every other slavery to anyone else, when you're a slave to anyone else, it's going to be oppressive. When you're a slave to Allah, easy. Easy. And it comes with some deals, man. Oof. This religion. So beautiful. Does Allah give every human being anyway, Muslim or non? He gives every human being. But he says to the slave, he says, if you just become grateful, I'll keep on giving you and keep on giving you and keep on giving you more and more and more without limit. I'll give you more than anybody else. He told the Jews, the previous nation, he told them, لَأَكَلُوا مِن فَوْقِهِمْ وَمِن تَحْتِ أَرْجُلِهِمْ. If they only live by the book, did the book have endless rules or just a few rules? Just a few rules. If they could just live by the book, then they would have eaten, they would have enjoyed treasures that would come from the sky, and they would be treasures coming out from the earth. And they could have had an amazing life in this world. In this world. Just because they abided by Allah's law. That's all. In other words, he's not just saying, do stuff for me and I'll give you Jannah. He's saying, do stuff for me, I'll turn this world into Jannah for you, and then on top of that, I'll give you Jannah. I'll set you up in this life. I will give you a good life. You just obey me. Stop disobeying me. That's all. That's all I'm asking. And it's not a lot he's asking you to just, to not do. This is إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Ya Allah, help us out. How do we become your slaves? I mean, I'm ready to become your slave, but it sounds too hard. Then, this next part, again, it's very logical. Again, you need to understand, and to build this argument, there are two things you need to know. The first thing is that when you become someone's slave, which is a lot more than becoming someone's employee, right? It's a lot more than becoming someone's employee. But even when you're an employee, don't you need instructions? You can't just have a job and not have instructions. You need to know what to do. So Allah, if I'm his slave, obviously you can only be a slave if you know what the master wants. So he's asking me, or we're asking him, can you give us some instructions? What do you want us to do? How do we ask that in the Fatiha? What's the words? Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. Guide us through and along the straight path. Guide us to this path because we don't know what to do. You need to give us these instructions. We needed your help. Here's the number one help we need. This is the first thing. Then the second thing. Okay, let me do this. Because I have boys and girls in the class, this is going to be easy. I want to throw parties to you guys. Like a big giant party. But I can only throw it either for the boys or the girls. Okay? Sorry. I will let the girls decide who the party should be for. Any ideas? Who should it be for? For the girls? Forget it. Guys, I'd like to throw you guys a party. It's going to be epic. video game tournaments, basketball, barbecue, maybe a road trip to California maybe. The whole 9 yards. What do you think, boys or girls? Any thoughts? Boys? I'm so surprised. When you ask boys, they favor boys. And when you ask girls, shockingly enough, they favor who? Girls. It is impossible for you to not be a girl anymore and to think like a boy and to favor, because you are who you are. It's impossible for you to not be a boy anymore and think like a girl. You are who you are. You can only side with who? Yourself. You're created biased. You're biased towards who? Your own kind. You understand that? You're biased towards your own kind. Now imagine that there's a disagreement between a man and a woman. There's a disagreement between who? A man and a woman. You need a judge. Now the judge is either a man or a woman. Is that going to be a problem? Is it possible it's a problem? If you let the man be a judge, who is a possibility he might favor the man? If the judge is a woman, is it possible she might favor the woman? Is that possible? Because all human beings at the end of the day can't help being who they are. And if you are who you are, you clearly have some what? Bias. You have some bias, don't you? Okay. So you guys understand that you can't have absolute justice from a judge, because a judge is either going to be a man or a woman. Just like I couldn't expect fairness from you guys. Nobody said, no, don't do a party for us, just do something less, but do it for both. Nobody said that. That wasn't the first thought that came in your head. The first thought was girls, obviously. Guys, totally. You understand? So between men and women, you really can't have a fair judge. Doesn't feel like you can have a fair judge. You know, they have divorce courts in America. And some divorce courts, the judge is a woman. And some divorce courts, the judge is a man. And those judges themselves have gone through a divorce. So when they go, when a divorced judge guy is about to take the next case, and he sees this woman who's like, my husband's useless. I want nothing to do with him. I want all his money. He's a rat. He's this, he's that. He's listening to her, but he's not thinking about her, is he? Who's he thinking about? His ex-wife, who he's still paying money to, and he's like, I can't get my wife, but I'm gonna get this one. You got nothing, woman. Get out of my courtroom. You, sir, enjoy your life. I couldn't. You shall. The other way around, if the judge is a woman, she's going to do the same thing, isn't she? She's going to drop the axe on the guy. And you can't do anything about that. Now, so I told you between men and women, there's going to be a conflict, and you can't really find a fair judge. It's almost impossible. Okay. Now let me give you another example. You guys got a job. You have a job, anybody? Anybody here have a job? Okay, mashallah, 2, 3 of you. If you have a job, obviously you have a boss. So I go to the boss and say, hey boss, you should decide how much the employee should get paid, and you should also decide how much vacation they should get. How much pay and how much vacation. Who's going to decide, the boss or the employee? The boss. Is the boss going to give you more pay or less pay? If the decision is entirely the boss's, would he rather give you more pay or less pay? Less pay. Would he rather give you more vacation or less vacation? Less vacation. Okay. Then you go to the employee and say, okay, you decide how much you want to get paid and how much vacation. What's the employee going to decide? More pay, more vacation. Boss says less pay, less vacation, and employee says more pay and more vacation. So there's a conflict not only between men and women, there's also a conflict between the boss and the employee, right? And they have to negotiate. And the boss constantly says, you're getting paid too much, you're not doing enough work, you need to come in for Saturday and Sunday too. So he wants more work, and the employee says, I'm tired, I need my time off with my family, I need to get paid more, I need a bonus, I need to get paid more. And they're going back and forth, all the time. So and this conflict, this war gets so intense sometimes that all the employees get together and they make a labor union. You ever heard of labor unions in school? Because they need to get paid and protect their rights. and the bosses aren't paying them enough. Then you have to have laws that give minimum wage. And then the businesses say this minimum wage law is too high. We can't afford it. There's a lot of, is it solved or is it constantly going on? It's constant. Is the conflict between men and women solved or is it constantly going on? And okay, so this conflict between bosses and employees, let's find a fair judge. Let's find a fair judge. At the end of the day, someone will either side with bosses or someone will side with employees. Like Republicans like to side with bosses and Democrats like to side with employees. It's just what it is. You have to pick. You can't side with both. It's impossible. You can either think like one or the other. Okay, so that's the second. What was the first conflict? Men versus women. What's the second conflict? Boss versus employee. Here's the third. There's 4 conflicts. Here's the third conflict. If you let the government decide how much tax, how many rules should we have on people, how much control should we have on people, government decides everything. How much freedom should they have? Will they decide that you should have more or less freedom? Will they decide that you should pay more or less tax? The government will say you should pay more tax, you should have less freedom, you should get less services, and you should pay us more. If you let people decide everything, how much tax should we pay the government? If you let people have the decision entirely, what would we decide as a people? We're not going to pay tax. We're not going to pay tax. And how much control do we want from the government? We hate the government. We don't want any government. We'd rather not have government. It's a necessary evil to us. So if you let people decide, there'd be chaos. There wouldn't be any government. And if you let governments decide, there would be like dictatorship. Isn't that true? In other words, in history, there's always been a war between men and women. There's always been a war between bosses and employees. And there's always been a war between governments and people. Whether it's a kingship, or it's a democracy, or it's communism, or it's a dictatorship, it doesn't matter. There's always been a back and forth between government and people. Is there such a conflict in the United States, for example, between government and people? Does it exist? Sure. Have you ever seen conflict between men and women, between bosses and employees? Has this always been there? Yes, it's always been there. How many conflicts did I tell you I'm going to talk about? 4. I told you 3 so far. Men versus women. Then what? Boss versus employee. And then government versus people. The fourth and final conflict is the conflict you have with yourself. There's a war going on inside you. You are made up of 2 parts. You remember this? You are made up of this body and you are made up of a ruh. The ruh is physical or spiritual? It's spiritual. The body is physical or spiritual? Physical. The ruh says we should do spiritual stuff. I need spiritual food. I need to pray and remember Allah and do dhikr and spiritual stuff. The body says I want physical stuff. I want food, not spiritual food. I want food. I want to have a good time. I want to enjoy myself. I want to have entertainment. So inside of you, there's something that's asking for spiritual food and something that's asking for physical food. There's spiritual pleasure and there's physical pleasure. There's spiritual beautification and there's physical beautification. And this war is happening where? Inside of you. There are 4 battles that all human beings are fighting. All human beings. If you let the soul decide, if you let the spiritual decide, who will suffer? Body will suffer. The Christians decided, a group of them decided that they are going to just take care of their soul. They will dress in uncomfortable clothes. They're not going to get married because that's for the body. That's physical. They're not going to eat tasty food. They're not going to live in beautiful homes. They'll live inside dark churches. We only want to take care of what? Our soul. Forget about our body. There are people today who say we should only take care of our body. Who cares about the soul? Do both of these people end up hurting themselves? Yep. They end up sometimes killing themselves, either side. Either side. Now, when we asked Allah for guidance, when I brought these four conflicts up because when we asked Allah for guidance, we asked Him, the imagery of the guidance is, it's a straight path. It's a path that is straight, which means it's in the middle. It's straight down the middle. So the only one who will not favor men over women is who? Because Allah created men and Allah created women. The only one possible who can be fair is Allah. The only one who can be fair between bosses and employees is who? Is Allah. The only one who can create a balance between government and people is who? Allah. The only one who can create a balance between the soul, the spiritual, and the physical is who? Allah. When we call this the straight path, we call this the straight path because it is the balance. It is the right negotiation. Here's what women get, here's what men get. Here's what the boss gets, here's what the people get. Here's what the government gets, here's what the people get. Here's what your soul gets, here's what your ruh gets, here's what your body gets. I will distribute it fairly so neither side gets ruined. Everybody gets what they want, and this will be the balanced path. This is Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. It could only have come from Allah. Anyone else, and you would be biased this way or you would be biased that way. You understand that? That's why we're asking Allah for the straight path. This is absolutely critical. This is what justice is in Islam. This is what justice is. Ihdina Sirat al-Mustaqim. Okay? It's a very beautiful and a very powerful concept in our religion. Now, I'm going to go back and give you guys high school or college level terminology now. What was the first conflict? Man versus? That's called the social conflict. What's the second conflict? That's called the economic conflict. What's the third conflict? Government versus people. What do you think that's called? That's the political conflict. Social justice, economic justice, political justice. The third, there's no term for it. I got nothing. You can call it the internal conflict. What is the internal conflict? Ruh and body. Okay? Quran came to give us balance. Allah sent messengers to give balance to all of these. You study the Quran, you'll find how Allah takes care of both sides. You know, for example, when Umar radiallahu anhu was in charge, people had, marketplaces, like open flea market type places, right? And people would sell stuff. And one guy was kind of rich. So, like, imagine everybody sells bananas. There's like 5-6 guys that sell bananas. This guy's kind of rich. So he bought more bananas than everybody else. So everybody else only buys 20 bananas and sells 20 bananas. This guy bought 200 bananas. Now, if you buy 200 bananas, do you get them at a cheaper price? If you buy bulk, you get it at a cheaper price. So everybody else paid, let's imagine, $1 per banana, but he paid 50 cents per banana. So everybody else has to sell it for $2. Why? Because they have to make some money. But that guy can sell it for how much? He could sell it for $1 and still make a lot of money. Right? Now everybody else, can they sell for $1? If they sell for $1, how much money do they make? Nothing. Now this guy is making all the sales because people go to him because his prices are cheaper. And all the other guys that sell bananas are going out of business. Umar radiallahu anhu comes in and says, you can't do that. You have to sell at a price that is fair for everybody. You cannot sell at an unfair price. You're running other people out of business. You cannot be Walmart. Literally, Umar told the banana guy, we're not going to have Walmart here. Why? Because if you have Walmart, what happens to the small businesses? They die. They just die. You don't realize it because you're like, it's cheapest prices, got a good smiley face on there. So everybody's happy. Everybody's not happy, actually. Actually, everybody's not happy. There's a lot of injustice happening. You don't see it. All you see is a giant lit store and a parking lot, but you don't see the injustice on the other side. How many people went out of business? How many people are being paid so little so that you and I can save a couple of dollars? You know? So this is something they became sensitive to. Not because they had economic laws or a Congress that passed laws about we have to take care of small businesses. Where did Umar get this idea from that we have to take care of people and make sure everything's fair? Where did he get this idea from? Quran. They were so careful about justice. Let me tell you something. When they internalized this Quran, one time it was, I think the story has to do with Umar radiallahu anhu. Umar radiallahu anhu was in court, and Ali came in because he had a disagreement with a Jewish man. So Umar is the judge, and Ali is one of the plaintiffs, and the other plaintiff is a Jewish man. And so Umar radiallahu anhu, out of fairness, asked the Jew first, so tell me what your story is. Which is pretty cool, right? Asking the other guy first. So he asked him, he told the story. Then he turned to Ali and he said, okay, Aba Hassan, tell me your story. Aba Hassan means father of Hassan, because Ali radiallahu anhu was the father of a young boy named Hassan. Ali stopped. He said, wait, what'd you call me? He said, Aba Hassan. He goes, you didn't call him with a nickname when you asked his story, but you asked me with my nickname. You're biased. We don't need your judgment. He walked away. They were so sensitive to justice. Where did it come from? The idea that Allah will reveal balance. That kind of sensitivity to justice in your workplace, in school, at home. That's what we're asking Allah for. Become fair people. We cannot have perfect justice in this world. I already told you. But human beings, when they start trying, oh, this world becomes beautiful. It still doesn't become perfect, but it becomes beautiful when human beings start trying. Okay? But the last comment before I give you your break is as follows. This is, again, an important comment. And that is that in order to have justice, there are two parts. In order to have fairness, there are two parts. The first part is fair people. Fair people. And the second part is fair laws. Two parts again. What are they? Fair people and fair laws. Okay. So if the rules are fair, but the guy who's implementing the rules or the people who are trying to get a judgment, they're unfair. Can they manipulate the rules? Does that sometimes happen, that you have a good rule, but somebody can find a sneaky way around the rules and not break the rule, but kind of bend the rule? Does that happen? Sure, sure. It can happen in your household. It can happen in business. It can happen. So rules can be, even if rules are fair, is there always a way around them? Sure. That's what you have lawyers for. Like, for example, the United States has tax law. I went to business school, and I was originally going to go become an accountant. After I took Accounting 101, I was okay. I said, no, thank you. Okay. When I took Accounting 101, one of the craziest things I've ever heard in my life, my professor told me, when your client, one day you will become an accountant, when your client comes to your office, because they want to file their taxes through you, what's the first question you ask them? And people are raising their hand. What kind of business do you run? How much did you make this year? Da, da, da. He goes, no, you're all wrong. Here's the first question you ask them. How much do you want to pay in taxes? What? How much do you want to pay in taxes? Is that up to me? Really? Yeah, we'll make it work. We can file certain things as expenses. We can turn some things into tax rebates. We'll take this lunch that you had with your family. We'll make that a business lunch. I think IRS won't ask about that. And we can move some stuff around. And he knows the rules. The guy knows the rules. So he knows how to manipulate them. Will you get justice that way? No. The laws have to be fair and people have to be fair. Now, if people are fair, but the laws themselves are not fair, do you get justice? Nope. You don't get justice that way either. You need to have both. The Quran says that the priority, please listen to this now. The Quran says that the priority is actually people being fair. That comes number one. That is actually most of the problem. Most of the problem isn't the law isn't fair. Most of the problem is people aren't fair. People have to become fair. And then if people become fair, it becomes easy for them to implement the laws that are fair. And it becomes easy for them to get rid of the laws that are not fair. But people themselves, if they are not fair, then you're not going to get anywhere. So if you study the Quran, you'll find a few laws. You'll find a few laws. But you know most of the time what Allah will be talking about? You being fair. You being ready for Judgment Day. Judgment Day is when fairness will come. Out of fear of that fairness, you better become fair now. That's the majority problem in the Quran. Okay, that's the big one. We keep talking about, for example, some Muslims think Islam will come in the world when we have Sharia, when we have Islamic laws, and we take every thief, and we chop, and we do all this, then justice will be there. Actually, no. Though you're just talking about the laws that are fair. But the laws that are fair will be no good until what? People are fair. Until people are fair. And that's what we have to implement. We have to implement a sense of justice within ourselves. That is the core teaching of Ihdina as-Sirat al-Mustaqim. So we'll stop here. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayat wa dhikr al-Hakim. Take 10 minutes and inshallah then we'll come back and finish up.